My father, he used to listen a lot of music in home. So since I was a boy, I was listening Elvis songs in home.
Became an Elvis fan just by watching the movies when I was a young man. And growing up watching him, he had all the moves and all the chicks.
Elvis fan. You know, I've been an Elvis fan all my life. I grew up in an Elvis-loving family. My mom is the oldest of 7. She has 5 sisters and a brother. And my grandma was a huge Elvis fan. And growing up, it was always Elvis in the house, you know, Christmas time. But when I was born, my mom's youngest sister was like 6. And so growing up and going to my grandparents' house, my aunts all still lived at my grandparents' house. And they loved Elvis, and so they got me into it early, as long as I can remember. They used to dress me up and slick my hair back with Vaseline, and so I've loved Elvis all my life.
Well, I became aware of Elvis the day he died. Like I said on the stage there, I rode my bicycle up to the house and I got off of it and I walked in there, and my mama was crying and my daddy had the stereo turned up and Elvis Love Me Tender was on TV, and I kind of paid attention. I said, I don't know what it is about this guy, but he's always got about 2 or 3 women around him, so I better pay attention. So
I became to be a fan of Elvis because my mum and dad had a couple of Elvis Presley records, The Wonder of You and Suspicious Minds, and then it just grew from them really.
You know, when I was a boy going to grade school, and you know, Elvis has been in our family all our lives, and I was playing Elvis 45 records on a little box record player when I was in grade school. And we've been an Elvis fan all of our lives. And I'm 66 years old. So you can count how many years I've been an Elvis fan.
Well, I became an Elvis fan in high school when a buddy of mine introduced me to my first 45 records of Elvis. And I wasn't an Elvis fan at the time. And when he introduced me to this music, it was just like it opened up a whole new world for me. It was just the best music ever. It was magical. It spoke to every emotion, and I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it.
Oh my, you know, as early as I can remember, my mother got me into his music, and probably 5 years old, I can remember, you know, watching Fun in Acapulco, Blue Hawaii, some of the earlier Elvis movies, and from that point on, man, I just kind of got hooked. I've been an Elvis fan ever since.
Well, since I got my first Elvis cassette, I was about maybe 10 or 11 years old.
Oh man, my dad, he spun a lot of records growing up. 45s, 33s, of all the Memphis music, and heard Don't Be Cruel, and it was it for me. Elvis, it was it.
I started to sing Elvis Presley and fall in love about music when I was for sure 10 years old, but when I was 15 I really discovered Elvis Presley, and I say wow. So I was around 15, so it's more than 20 years ago.
When I first started watching his movies, back in the early days when I was a kid, and that just inspired me to sing his movie songs. That's about all I do though, just his movies.
I became an Elvis fan when I was 3 years old.
I think we're ready.
My mom put on Hound Dog for me, and I just couldn't stop listening to it. And I just haven't stopped from then, you know?
Oh man, I was just a child, and I remember my dad got a record for me, a Conway Twitty record called Danny Boy. It was a rockabilly version, and I loved it. I was just obsessed with it, listened to it over and over and over. And then next week or so, Mom took me to the store and bought me some Elvis records, and that was it. And I've just been a huge fan ever since.
From the time I was a little kid, I started playing guitar at 5 years old, and I saw Elvis on TV, and I just knew that's what I wanted to be.
What was it about him that drew you to him?
Well, I mean, obviously instantly, like, image of a rock star right there. I mean, you can't get away from, like, nobody has ever looked cooler than that 68 comeback special. But then once, you know, I'm a little kid and I love my mom, and you start to, like, learn a little bit about Elvis, and I really felt like I had, like, a parallel relationship with my mother as he did with Gladys, his mother. And just not just his music, but his life inspired me.
Since I was about 8 years old, I don't know how many years that is now, that would give away my age, and so that would be top secret. No, I've actually been a fan since 1968, I guess.
I'm 36. I remember listening to him when I was about 10 and really getting into his songs then, so we're looking at 26 years.
Just the way he delivered a song, the way he controlled, I wouldn't say controlled, but held his audience and even his band members in the palm of his hand to get them to do what he wanted them to do.
The first thing, kind of a long story, but we were at the drive-in, my brother and I and my folks, and we were there to see something else, and there was some previews on, and evidently it was an Elvis Presley preview, and some girls in bikinis or something, and I wasn't even paying attention to it, and my mom said something about, oh, that Elvis Presley, he's so nasty. Well, of course, a 7-year-old kid's gonna go, nasty, nasty, what? And so I leaned up, and my mom says, just sit back. And then of course the Aloha thing came along in '73, and that was it.
I mean, I've always loved mid-century Americana, you know, the culture of that, artistically, you know. And so when it came to, I was trying to make a living as a performer, and I was involved with like musical theater and stuff, but I was still, you know, I was still waiting tables, I was still cleaning toilets at CVS, you know, I was still doing jobs that, you know, that I really didn't like, but I still had to have a job, so I did it. You know, I believe in working. I believe man's not a man unless he's working. If he's able to work, he's got to work. So I was waiting tables, and a lady said, hey, have you ever thought about doing Elvis? And I said, not really, but I like Elvis, you know. I mean, I didn't know too much about him. I thought he was really, really amazing, and I liked the songs. But when she suggested that, I really started studying the character and really falling in love with what he did. And I know how much he impacted that Americana culture in the mid-century, but also not just America, but the world. I mean, it really shaped it. So Elvis was not the first rock and roller, but he was by far the most important. And so that made me really get into his music, and not just his music particularly, but also the people that influenced him as well. Because that switched. Once I started to learn about Elvis, I was like, who shaped Elvis? Like, what made Elvis into what he is? And so that's really cool too.
My mom and my dad played the Elvis record. I learned on the Aloha from Hawaii. That's my favorite show. I just played over and over and over and over in my room.
I've been an Elvis fan for 40 plus years, ever since I was probably 10, 11 years old.
That would be back when I was in high school. My sister brought home Elvis's Golden Records Volume 1, and I heard that and I said, wow, that's awesome. I wore that record out. I played that every day, over and over and over. And so I just started collecting records from then on and learning every song that I could.
I became an Elvis fan when I was 6 years old. I was listening to a stack of records with my grandpa. He had Billy Crash Craddock, Statler Brothers, and George Jones, and we ran across the Elvis record one day when we were listening to him, Aloha from Hawaii, and just something sparked, something clicked in me, and never been the same ever since. So, you know, I just fell in love with his music and everything, watched the movies, and wanted to know all about him, you know. So that was at 6 years old, and I started doing talent shows and different things, and you know, I even met my wife, Leanne, through Elvis's music, through Facebook, so it's a cool story there. And everything I do is strictly a tribute to Elvis. I mean, of course, you know, it's cliche to say, but there'll never be another one like him. But to have the God-given talent to pay tribute to him is awesome. And through Elvis's music, I've learned, you know, I adapted my own voice. After years of singing his and everything, I learned, you know, how to sing by doing that, playing guitar at age 12. And I started writing my own music about 10 or 11 years ago. So I have to give Elvis major credit because without his music and everything, I don't know if I would have even gotten into music, period. You know, so who knows? God could only answer that question. So
when I was little, hearing music as I was growing up. My mom playing the music, you know, just growing up.
Probably since I was about 4, because I had 3 older sisters, and one of them, and still is now, a real fan of Elvis.
I've been a fan of Elvis since I was 3. My mom said I was watching
watching him on TV, became infatuated, and that's how it all started, mimicking. When I was 3 years old, she said, about 1967.
Since 73. Now I'm going to tell you my age now, which I don't like doing, but I was 3 in 73. And my dad used to listen to the crooners, and Elvis is one of them, and that's what got me hooked, but he's nowhere near the fan that I became.
Well, my father used to be an Elvis tribute artist back in the 80s and 90s, and his name was Terry Williams, and he worked with Doc Franklin and the Images of the King competition back when Doc Franklin was alive. And he also went to college, and Bible college in Tupelo, Mississippi, where Elvis Presley went to college, and met Elvis there, and also was friends with Elvis and met him in Las Vegas and Graceland here in Memphis. And I went to a few of his shows when I was growing up, and he had a stroke, so he kind of retired, and I picked up on it. And since then, I mean, since 5 years old, I've really been a big Elvis fan, but I've been an Elvis fan my whole life, just about. So.
A fan of Elvis since I was a kid. When I was 16, my mama gave me this belt buckle for Christmas. So it's been a long time that I've been a fan. But I just recently started singing in 2002. So and I did my big debut out here at Elvis Week for his 25th anniversary of Elvis Week.
Well, I was together with my mom at the shopping mall, and I bought a record called Elvis in Concert, and then I was lost, his costumes, his voice, everything.
I was 12, and my grandfathers, they love Elvis, and I used to watch Elvis movies back home, the black and white movies, the rock and roll movies, and I fell in love with Elvis immediately.
Well, I've always loved Elvis since I was little. My mom loved Elvis, my grandpa loved Elvis, and they all turned me on to Elvis.
What was it about him that got you interested into it?
Well, just his stage presence, pretty much. He looked like, he had the high collars and the jumpsuits, and he just looked like a Greek god to me. And I fell in love with him.
An Elvis fan. I was 4 years old, and my parents took me to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and I seen an Elvis tribute artist come out on the stage. Thought that was the coolest thing I ever seen, and that's what I knew that I wanted to do when I grew up.
I first became an Elvis fan. My dad's in a rock and roll band, and also does the Elvis thing as well. And my mum's a massive Elvis fan. And it's just sort of like, I used to walk in with I used to have a jumpsuit when I was about 6. I used to walk in with a guitar and copy everything that Elvis did and that. And since then, it's just sort of, I've just loved it even more.
Well, it all started really when I was, I turned on a karaoke channel during Christmas and I wanted to sing for my family. And I found Blue Christmas in the style of Elvis Presley. And at that time I found it fit my voice, so I looked up more Elvis Presley stuff because I was curious. And so, and then I got really into it after I heard more Elvis songs. And then my dad encouraged me more, and so that's where I really got inspired to become an ETA.
I was about 6 years old, and my aunt, we had to get ready for my sister's wedding, and she didn't have a dancing partner, so she taught me how to dance in the kitchen, and we played Blue Suede Shoes, Johnny B. Good, and all that good stuff. Really popular songs, and I just took to it, and it's always just been kind of like something I've latched onto ever since then.
When I was very, very young, about 4 years old, I remember seeing Elvis on the cover of an album, and that's what he was in the powder blue suit, and I thought, wow, who is this guy? And then I started listening to him, and then I've been a fan ever since.
Well, when I was 3 years old, I was sitting in the living room one day. I remember this as clear as it was as if it was like yesterday. I was sitting in the living room and Aloha from Hawaii came on, and I just was in awe of this amazing man I was watching on television, and I didn't know who he was or any of his songs, but just watching him and looking at him, I knew there was something special about him. When I asked who he was, I was told, that man right there is Elvis Presley.
I became an Elvis fan probably the first time I saw an Elvis movie on TV back when I was 6, 7 years old, which was back in the 60s.
What was it about Elvis that drew you to him?
Well, when I was a little kid, I liked it that, he could get a girl, win the fights, sing a couple songs, and win the race at the end of the movie.
Well, actually, I've been an Elvis fan since I was little. And but as far as my music is concerned, I hadn't done Elvis music up until just recently. And I got connected with some of the Elvis tribute artists in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Robert Kiefer, Danny McCorkle was over there. And I got invited to come here and play at Graceland this year. It's my first year at Elvis Week. And I started putting together Elvis music and added them into my repertoire and been doing them over the course of this year and kind of culminated here, get to come play at Elvis Week.